We've been talking about communion, and we've been talking also about the blood sprinkled in the Sinaitic Covenant. And one of the concerns with people in churches that they don't do communion very often is because they're afraid, it'll become so common, profane, I suppose. And I'm telling you, we've been here, and everybody here, because we were throwing it at them constantly, and everybody's doing their commentary, and they're looking for communion through the whole thing. And guess what? When someone would say, you have communion every day? You know, someone from the outside, that every day? Are you kidding? What? Because the guys that would preach every night, they were required to do communion. And so that they would learn to take whatever their sermon was and learn to get that over into about remembering Christ and the importance of communion, covenant meal. And people said, doesn't it get old? And Irish would go, no, not a bit. In fact, it's every night. It's like it's new. It's because it's alive. We understand what it means. What was the difference? Some people knew what it meant, and the others had no idea. And they thought it was just something stupid that the church does. They had no idea why. Just like when God changed Abram's name. And then God did this. Nobody tells you why. What was going on? Again, blood covenant. I wonder if Satan doesn't want you to know about that. I mean, do you think? Back to Exodus chapter 24, please. He builds this altar. The blood is there. Half of it is sprinkled on the altar, the 12 stones. And then what he also does, if you look in verse 8, Moses took the blood and sprinkled it on the people. Behold the blood of the covenant, which Yeshua would, again we said, behold the blood of the covenant, which the Lord has made with you in accordance with all these words. Now, those words I want to take a look at too. Well, there's actually one other place we need to look. I want us to look at something, a kind of an obscure story, real quickly. And if you would stay in Exodus, but turn back to Exodus chapter 4. And there's an odd story that we're going to take a look at. So we look at the beginning of chapter 4, and Moses said, what if they don't believe me? Has the Lord appeared to you? And he says, what's that in your hand? And he said, it's a staff, and that's when these things happen. And we see all these different things going on. And Yahweh speaks to Moses, and he says, here's what's you're going to be able to use this staff. It's going to be something else. Verse 10, Moses said to Yahweh, well, I'm not very eloquent, and I'm not, and he's always doing is fussing. Wait a second. They're not going to, and wait a second, I can't talk. Yahweh said to him, verse 11, who's made man's mouth? Who makes him mute and deaf? Is it not I, Yahweh? Now then go, and I'll be your mouth. But Moses keeps on fussing. But Lord, now send the message by whomever you will. I mean, good. From early, Moses understood he was supposed to be the deliverer, but he's going, well, I can't talk. Look in verse 14. Then the anger of Yahweh burned against Moses. What was he doing? Do you understand? Do you all catch what Moses was doing? Moses was saying, I don't want to do this. I can't talk. You need to get somebody that's really worthwhile. Don't you kid yourself about the Davises looking at one another often for the last 22 years and going, what are we doing here? Or if God calls us to go speak at some place, what are we doing here? I mean, he's got better people. Surely he's got better people. And that's the way it feels. Moses is going, well, there's got to be somebody else. But anyway, God gives in to him. And if God tells you to speak, you speak anyway. no matter what your lack of eloquence you may think. And anyway, it goes on in this chapter. And we see in verse we'll start in 19. Now Yahweh said to Moses and Midian, go back to Egypt, for all the men who were seeking your life are dead. So Moses took his wife and his sons and mounted them on a donkey and returned to the land of Egypt. Moses also took the staff of God in his hand. Then Yahweh said to Moses, when you go back to Egypt, see that you perform before Pharaoh all the wonders which I put in your power, but I will harden his heart so that he will not let the people go. Then you will say to Pharaoh, thus says Yahweh, Israel is my son, my firstborn. So I said to you, let my son go that he may serve me. But you have refused to let him go. Behold, I will kill your son, your firstborn. Now it came about at the lodging place on the way that Yahweh met him and sought to put him to death. Wait a second. What is this? I mean, Moses should have gotten away with it at the beginning when he was going, I'm not going to do this. And verse 25 says, then Zipporah took a flint, cut off her son's foreskin, and threw it at Moses' feet. And she said, you are indeed a bridegroom of blood to me. So he let him alone. At that time she said, you are a bridegroom of blood because of the circumcision. I want you to stop and listen to me. Moses is about to go into, and we're talking about the blood of the covenant here, okay? Because here's the other place that blood in this covenant is brought about, and then we see it. And it's important that we understand this story that you're going, boy, that's weird. Zipporah, Moses' wife, had not been with him. I skipped over a verse, and there's actually another place where it kind of says it, because what Moses had done with his wife was he had left her with her father, Jethro, okay? And he kind of was going to go about his own business. We see later on that he comes back, and he had left her at that time with Jethro. He comes back with all the people of Israel, and Jethro won't let him leave without his wife. But there's an argument on the way to, do you notice that you don't hear Zipporah's name spoken when Moses and Aaron are doing their deal before Pharaoh? She wasn't there at that time, because this argument is what went on. And let me explain. Zipporah was not well impressed with this covenant thing. Now, we have Moses, and he's got a blood covenant partner, Zipporah. And they've had children. And they're supposed to be at one, but they're not. And Moses is heading into a kingdom, and it's a kingdom that the king believes, and everybody around him believes, what about that king? That he is God. That he is God. They believed that Pharaoh brought the sun up every day. Yeah. They believed all sorts of things about this God. And if you remember, we don't have to go back and read it because you'll remember the story. He looks at Pharaoh and says, oh, well, let him go. I'll show you. And he throws the thing down. It turns into a snake. Now, I've never known anybody, even at IMI, and we are into carrying sticks, okay? But I've never known any one of them to walk in and go and turn it into a snake. Maybe a dead snake.
Most have tried it.
Yeah, that's right. You don't do that. I mean, that should have, but Pharaoh wasn't impressed. He looked over at his magicians, and what did they do? Same thing. You are walking, Moses, you are headed into a very animistic society. They believe in demons. They believe in demon gods. They have real power. I'm telling you, and Moses, you know about IMI. Even the IMIers, as righteous and amazing as they are, none of them have ever thrown their sticks down and it turned into a snake. But these guys, Pharaoh knows. Do you understand what I'm saying? God understood. Moses, you're going back into a place that is full of Satan and his power. And instead of Moses and Zipporah being like this about God's covenant, they were like this. And that's what this story is about. Go ahead.
I was going to say, but Moses was one that should have circumcised his sons. And she recognized that.
But the problem is that I think because of her anger, he did not do it because of that. Because she was not sold out on the covenant. Do you understand what I'm saying? Now, I think he should have. Is Miss Davis right? Yeah. But what happens here, let me explain. He had said, okay, here's what goes on with the covenant. We don't see this, but you can kind of infer, so let me infer a little bit. They have this conversation. And he goes, now we're going to Egypt, and we're going to take them down. God looks at it this way. Moses, you're in blood covenant with me. But your blood covenant partner on the earth has resisted it. We see it. We see her anger. You have become a husband of blood to me. Ugh. You see, I think it's fairly clear, that Moses had probably said, we need to do this. And she went, not with my sons, you're not. And I'm not that kind of person. I'm not into this like you are. And so what has happened, though, is that they are headed toward Egypt, and Yahweh meets them, and Yahweh's going to kill them. What? He's going to kill Moses, rather, I'm sorry. What? Why? Because Moses is heading into this and is going to fail big time. Because his blood covenant partner is not like this. His blood covenant partner is like this. And Moses evidently did not stand firm and go, this is what has to happen. My children and my whole household has got to be in the covenant. Because if you're not in the covenant, you're not going to be protected. And they would have died in Egypt and failed miserably. God wasn't going to allow that to happen. And Moses had rather than saying, this is the way that it is, nothing's going to change me on this, went along with her, and they did not circumcise until this point. And if you look carefully, we would have to look and try to find it. In verse 18, Moses departed, returned to Jethro, his father-in-law, and said, please let me go. Let me return to my brethren who are in Egypt, see if they're still alive. Jethro said to Moses, go in peace. So Jethro, right there, is saying, he takes Zipporah. And later on, I'll have to look for it. But we're not going to worry about it right now. When Moses comes back with the children of Israel, he's brought them out. Zipporah wasn't with him. Zipporah had gone back home to Jethro. And then it gets kind of funny. And what's kind of funny about it is that Moses is going to I don't know how he's going to sneak 3 to 4 million people by Jethro. But, hey, we were never here, buddy. Anyway, he's coming up and Jethro comes out to meet him. And in so many words, Jethro says, you're taking your wife, man. And these kids are driving me crazy. You're getting them out of here. Anyway, I didn't say that. But he did say in so many words, you're taking your wife with you now. And the blood covenant had been cut. They had been circumcised. And everything was right. And Moses took Zipporah at that time. But she was not with him, even though he took her at first. But I believe that this is telling us, because of her disagreement with the covenant, that God could not allow. Could you imagine? Let's say that God did not stop Moses and he went in. Who would have died first? Let's look at something, and there's a little bit of a hint. Look in chapter 4 of Exodus, okay? And verse 22. Then you shall say to Pharaoh, thus says Yahweh, Israel is my son, my firstborn. So I say to you, let my son go, that he may serve me. But you refuse to let him go. Behold, I'll kill your son, your firstborn. Then we have that's this little argument going on here about covenant. What was going to happen? What was going to happen to Moses' son? He was going to die. He wasn't in the covenant. And Zipporah was not pleased with all this. Now, all I'm saying in all of this, first, is this: we do see the blood in this covenant, but we see the importance of being in the covenant. Christianity is not this thing that we've made it into, that you join the church and all is right with the world. In very many denominations, in fact, the largest denomination in the world, Christian denomination, when you are born into the church, you eventually are sprinkled by the priest or whatever. You're sprinkled, and then that's it. In other churches, you're sprinkled, and then when you get to be a certain age, you take confirmation classes, which teach you about their doctrines, and then you're able to take your First Communion. Now, none of that's biblical. And you're kind of going, but that what is that about? And the people will believe, I was sprinkled when I was a baby, and then I went and I listened to somebody drone on and on about whatever the doctrine is, and when I finished that, then I could go and take communion, the covenant meal. Wow. It doesn't matter whether they believed it or not. Do you understand? They just took a class, and it doesn't matter if they believed it, but I took the class. And I was sprinkled when I was a baby. Satan's done a great job. He's turned it completely around. We are to receive the water when we believe. And what he's done is said, when you're born, sprinkle them. And that's good enough. I don't know if you ever ask these people when you're talking to them, have you ever been baptized? Oh, yeah, when I was born. I mean, it's just a few days, and they took me up and sprinkled me. Priest came, that was good. And they live like the devil. But they're a member of the church. Do you understand the travesty of this? I don't know if you're thinking about it, but right now I'm talking specifically. I was in a town, small town in Texas, that was filled with Germans and Poles. I mean, there were people named I remember the Schwartinskys. What? You know, Antkowiak. There was a guy, my pardon, I'm going to use his name, Albin. That was his first name. How many of you know people named Albin? You know, and he's a big, nice guy. His arms were this big around. One day I literally heard him say there was some kind of fight going on on that mental thing I worked in. And this guy's arms are this big. And he went, "Go get Mike. He'll take care of it." Your arms are bigger than my entire body. Why aren't you taking care of it? Anyway, Albin, wow. It's full of Catholics and Lutherans. Catholics and Lutherans. And who didn't get along real well. And they all had that kind of belief that you get sprinkled and you're good. You get sprinkled and then you're a member of the church. You get sprinkled and then you take classes, confirmation classes, and then you're a Christian. Do you understand? They believe what I just said. And they believe because they took a class, they're going to heaven. And they believe also that they can do anything on this earth and it's okay. Why? Because I took a class. Because I was sprinkled. Do you understand that this goes a little bit against what Jesus came to say? I am the new covenant. This is my blood. This is my body. You should be happy I'm going away, because when I go away, I'm going to send back the Spirit. And He's going to live inside you. But He's only going to live inside you if you've taken the class and you were sprinkled when you were a baby. Now, I know it doesn't say that. But this is unbelievable. I mean, to me, anyway, this is a travesty. Those people, I'm not saying that there's not believers in their group. There are. But I'm saying the majority believe what I just told you, and none of that is biblical. And these people are not going to wake up in heaven. They're not going to wake up. They'll be gone. People that Jesus Christ died for. And nobody can explain to them anything about why the stuff they believe is true. Not biblically, not from a biblical basis. I say that because it is important that all of us know how to talk about what real covenant with God is, what communion really means, that it is His blood, that it is our Lord, and He's welcoming you into the body, but it's covenant. It's blood covenant. Nobody knows how to explain it to them. Nobody can say a thing to them, not biblically. And they don't know anything. It's amazing to be around them. Many of them very nice people, but don't know the Lord at all. Don't know the first thing about Him. Miss Davis, do you have anything you want to bring up there?
No.
Okay. Well, that is the first part of the Sinaitic Covenant, where we have the blood, and we will stop there right now. Okay? Back there?
Yeah, I assume you're probably not going to do another session.
20 till 10? Yeah. We could probably squeeze the 30 minute into 30 minutes if you want us to. We'll be late, though. Ms. Davis, do you have anything you want to bring up? Anybody? We got a few minutes left here. Do y'all understand? Do you understand what we've been talking about this morning? I mean, To me, all of these things are very clear if you understand covenant. And you understand, we'll read about it later. All the people said, oh yeah, we'll do it, man. You have come to the right place. I would think that, don't get me wrong, I'd have been doing the same thing. You're looking at this mountain that's shaking all over the place, and thunder and lightning, and Moses is going, I've seen this before. He just, whatever you say, we'll do it. I mean, I would have been among them. I'm reading this, okay? I want to be righteous. We'll do it. I understand. Scary stuff. But of course they couldn't, and they wouldn't. All right. Ms. Davis, you sure you got nothing?
Yeah, just on that, God had already said, I'm the one that did this. I brought you out of Egypt. I brought you out of slavery. And he had said that loud and clearly to them. And they were saying, we can do this. Yeah. And we do that. We do it in ourself. Well, okay, God, you want me to do that now. Okay, I'll do that. And he's not saying that.
It's fascinating. I don't know if you've noticed this. Once you've been at IMI for a while and you you see the word keep or observe, you go tilt, and that you're reading a book, and somebody will quote one of those scriptures and they'll say, God is really into obedience, and what the scripture is saying is you need to obey these things. Y'all read any books along those lines? I mean, you'll pick up different ones, and you're going, that's not what it said. You want to just scream that the guy's dead. And that's not it. And at the beginning, in this, God says, here's this covenant that you, and NAS, and I'm sure the King James says, obey me. And the word is not obey, it's Shema, which is what? Listen. Not obey, it's listen. Is it important to obey? Yeah. It's just you can't obey it. I mean, this is the cool thing about the covenant. We've been given a better covenant. What is it? You can't obey it. This is good? Yeah, this is good. Once you understand, you can't obey it. Somebody tell me. No, I can't even formulate the question correctly. Jesus, in the greatest sermon that's ever been preached, his opening shot is saying, once you understand, once you get it, that in the new covenant, you can't obey it, you're doing pretty good. Which is what? The very first beatitude. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Theirs is the kingship of heaven. The king is over me. Why? I can't do it. What kind of stupid religion do you have? Your God tells you you have to do this stuff, and then the first thing that you confess is, I can't do it. Kind of wired up this morning. It's too much coffee. Man, you can't do it. You're going to say something. You got that look all...
No, I'm just listening to you.
Look like you're going to. Okay. I'll hush. I'm going to hush. Anybody? Anything? John?
I guess I will say this, and just in talking about, Moses being, as you said, like more or less chill with the mountain and everybody else just panicking, and it just reminds me how in my own life how I get the impression that a lot of other people are this way, but just like searching for a sign, if you want to put it that way,
Yeah.
something that you can be like, well, I've seen this thing, so that way I know that that this whole Christianity thing is real or whatever. But I mean, no generation saw as many things as that generation did, and they walked away possibly more than most other Israelite generations, which is saying something.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's just that it's not about the things that you see. It's about faith, about what you can't see. It's just about it always has been about just seeking in spite of, or seeking and believing in spite of the world around you.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody, all of us, fail at different times. You've heard my testimony of that hug that's in the book and in the teaching. And you've heard the holiness teaching, which is going to happen fairly soon. The presence of the Lord, this vehicle that I was driving for days at a time, and I thought, I'm going to explode just from absolute joy. This is amazing. Now, the cool thing is because I've experienced God like that. Every day since that time, I've meditated 3 or 4 hours on the Word. Y'all believe that? Are there times that I've gone, I didn't meditate at all, after knowing full well that He's saying, I want you in my presence? Bob Norville, who recently died, he and I were talking, and he had I think I brought this up fairly recently, but they were up at Eagle Mountain there in Arkansas, and they were helping one of their neighbors bring some cattle in. And Bob was on a four-wheeler, and he was, they didn't have horses, and so Bob was using the four-wheeler to drive these cattle in. And somehow the thing flipped over, which I think most of them are made to run whether it's on the four wheels or the four wheels are on you, evidently, because it happens all the time. I had another friend that died from that. Anyway, Bob flipped this thing over and busted himself up real good, and they thought he was going to die. And he said, they loaded me into the ambulance, and you could hear people, that are basically saying, "What? This is not good. He's going to die." And he said the Lord spoke to him as he's laying there, and all God said through the thing was, "Bob, I am going to have your fellowship." Now, what had been going on? I'm not telling anything on Bob, but Bob wouldn't tell if he were here. He had stopped meditating. He had stopped doing the things he needed to be doing in his relationship with God, and he was just working, just going forward. And he said, when the Lord spoke to him there, he was laughing at everybody saying that he was going to die because he thought, "No, I'm not." And he said, "This is a big spanking. It's okay. You can let me out of the ambulance." Of course, he's bleeding like crazy. He didn't say that, but he started laughing. He said, "Okay, got it. He's going to have my fellowship." And I've been busy. I'm not going to be busy for the next few months, am I? Because it messed him up bad. And every one of us fail in this. Every one of us forget. I need to be poor in spirit. Every one of us forget. I want you just to shema. Well, I'll obey that. Folks, I don't know where you are at this point here at IMI, but I'm here to tell you, if you are cruising, if you're just coasting, if you're going, and the enemy will use this, things that have happened to you, whatever, that make you, and the word is bitter. If you wind up unforgiving towards somebody hurts you or something like that, boy, that gets on your mind, and the next thing you know, you've stopped spending time in God's presence. Why? It's uncomfortable. Why? Because your meditation is the opposite of God's. It may be just things that He's used to pull the world in. And again, the meditation is the opposite of God's. God is speaking to us all this morning. come home. Ye who are weary, come home. And I say that, and I believe the Lord is saying it. You're not going to find rest outside of Him. You're not. Not true rest.